We're unmuted, we're live.
Hey, Cassandra, or Katie, sorry. Can you hear us?
Yes, we can hear you. Can you hear me?
We can't hear you, just wait. What's the live stream that's going?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Can't hear you. Are we good now?
Yes.
Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me okay, Mayor Murphy?
Yeah, no, perfect. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. We've sort of, we gotta. Yeah, give us 1 second. Let's check one more time. Can you hear us?
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yeah, just 1 second. I think we're good now. Oh, no. Can you mute that?
I muted this now. Can we do the test again?
Can we do one more check, Katie? Can you hear me?
Sure can. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I think we're good now. No, I think we were getting the live stream, sound and, at the same time, so it was coming in after we were talking. Second. So thanks for taking some time tonight. I know, I believe we're live streamed here, so I'll just, call this special meeting of council to order, on October 6th, 2024. As always, we like to recognize that we're, our community and we're meeting tonight on Treaty 5 territory, our homeland of our good friends and neighbors, the Opaskwayak Cree Nation, as well as many other indigenous people, and as well as the Red River Métis Nation people. So thanks for being here tonight with us. We just want to start off a little bit, we always like to start our meeting off with a little bit of recognition, and we had a lot of great things happening within our community the last couple of the last week. So just want to start off by thanking the Arts Council. I think the PA Immigration, what do they call the PA Immigration Services? And they're on a host on hundreds of volunteers for this great culture week that we had within our community. It was such a good event, and it was a lot of fun. And the food on Saturday was unbelievable. I was thinking there was one improvement that I said that at the event that could be done is that there should have been a place to have a nap after eating, because it was actually.
Bigger plates.
And yeah, no, I don't even know if bigger plates are a problem. There was good. And again, and then I would just also like to thank you guys for meeting with us tonight and gonna go through this presentation. I know there's been a lot of work put behind the scenes on this. I know council doesn't have all of the details, but they will tonight. I also want to thank Mike and Bola for leading this program and getting us to where we are, and everybody on the steering committee. So With that, Katie, I'll pass it over to you and we can have a chat. Maybe we could do a quick introduction as well, so. So maybe we'll start in here, you know me, I'm Andre Murphy, the mayor, Councillor,
Margaret Commodore.
Councillor,
Atkinson.
Councillor Allen, Councillor Hopper.
Well, let's see.
Mike, community safety estimate.
There you go, over to you, Katie.
Awesome. Thank you, Mayor Murphy. And hello, everyone. Thank you for having us today to present about the community safety and well-being planning process in the PA. Real quick, if we can do introductions for ourselves as well. And Bola, if you want to go skip 2 slides to the one with the photos, that'd be great. Please and thank you. Awesome. And then, perfect. So my name is Katie. I'm the Director of Operations and Services with the Canadian Centre for Safer Communities, or since it's a long name, CCFSC for short. And I'm joined today by my colleague, Stacey Colliver, who's the Director of Research and Services with the organization. So we're the project leads for the community safety and well-being planning in the PA. And just for keeping things short, I'm going to refer to it as CSWB going forward because it can be a mouthful to say that phrase all the way throughout the presentation. And I just want to acknowledge we're both located in southwestern Ontario. So we are joining you today from the traditional territory of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples. Can you
Just
hear?
1 second, Katie, just put that at the very top. It'll launch on the top. It should launch a
Is
little
that
bit.
okay?
Okay?
Is that
Okay, sure, go ahead.
Is everything good on that end, or Mayor Murphy?
Yeah, no, we've had some technical problems, so that's okay, we're good now, sorry.
No, all good. If you need me to pause, just let me know and I'm happy to do that. Just real quick too, before I go through the meeting objectives, I just want to flag, so this work is part of a larger project funded by the province, so Manitoba Justice, that involves the development of 12 CSWB plans in communities across the country, or across Manitoba, sorry. And they hired our organization to support this work. And we can send our website after this meeting, but just for information, our organization is a national not-for-profit organization that works with communities across Canada on CSWB planning as well as other work. So things like strategic planning, knowledge exchange, stuff like that. And we operate as a community of practice. And our ultimate vision is Canadian communities where people are safe and feel safe. And so the plan for today's presentation is to focus, of course, on the CSWB planning process that's been going on in the PA over the past 1.5 years or so, almost 2 years now. And we'll begin with a high-level summary of the CSWB planning process, so the key steps, the data collection, and so on. And then we'll present to you a summary of the data that we collected to inform this process. We'll then give an overview of the CSWB plan priority areas and the goals and actions associated with each one. And we'll give a little bit more of a description as to what we're referring to when we say that as we move along in the presentation. And then finally, we'll wrap up with a conversation about what happens next. So that includes plan implementation. The big question, of course, is resourcing, including the seed funding from the province, which is attached to this project, as well as monitoring and evaluation and really tracking the outcomes that occur as a result of this plan and the implementation with it. And then we've also,
Just give us one pause there, Katie.
yep, for sure.
Can you just move that far so that we have the proper viewing, like the presentation mode or whatever it is? So then we can see the people talking and we can also.
Like this sort of.
Yeah, but isn't there a way of having the people on the screen and then having the screen projected at the same time?
Yes, but that will also affect our live stream.
Oh, okay, that's it. And yeah, just leave it like that. You can see that, we can see the person talking. All right, sorry, Katie.
No, all good. All right, and then I just will flag too, we do have time allocated at the end for questions and feedback from council. Obviously, that's what we're hoping for. I just want to note too that the plan isn't officially finalized yet. So the purpose of this meeting is really to give you an opportunity to hear what's going on and see kind of the draft plan elements, but also give you as town council an opportunity to provide your feedback so that we can incorporate that into that final version of the plan. All right. Thanks, Bola. So this slide provides an overview of the steps that were taken to get us to where we are now in the CSWB planning process. And so as you can see, this involved 4 key stages. So the first is preparation, and this is where really, we kind of came in, met the folks in the community, developed the project team, which as Mayor Murphy mentioned, consisted of himself, Bola, and Mike. And they've really been supporting the day-to-day pieces of this process from the get-go. So appreciation to them for their ongoing work on this. And we couldn't have done this without them. And then during this process, we also developed a multi-sectoral steering committee, which was created based on feedback from the project team. And it includes representatives in decision-making roles across sectors. And again, I'll give a little bit more of an overview of what that entails in a moment here. But basically, that group provided high-level oversight of the entire planning process, and we're hoping that will continue, or at least a segment of that group will continue into the implementation. Before I go to the next one, Mayor Murphy, is everything good on your end in terms of tech and sound?
Yeah, no, it looks good now.
Awesome. Okay. And then the second phase in the CSWB planning process then is the assessment, which involves a multi-level data collection process, because obviously we want to make sure that these plans are informed by local perspectives and realities. And so this included a review of existing data, a public community safety and well-being survey, and engagement sessions. So similar to focus groups, for example, with various community groups. And then once all of that data was collected, our team compiled and analyzed all that information to identify key themes that emerged. And that led us into the third phase of the process. So to then identify the priorities and actions for the community safety and well-being plan, we took those key themes that emerged from the data that we collected and presented them back to that steering committee. And through multiple conversations, so we had a long full day in-person meeting and then a couple follow-up virtual meetings. We basically narrowed that list down to the CSWB plan priority areas, and then had some conversations in relation to each one where we identified how to then address those priority areas. We also had conversations with the steering committee around what the plan implementation process could look like, and identified a suggested governance model and implementation plan to make sure that this does become an actionable plan. It doesn't just remain a document on a shelf like we've seen so many times before. And then we're currently in the final phase of this process. So all of this information is now being written into the CSWB plan document, which, as I mentioned.
Katie, sorry,
Yeah.
I gotta just interject. Maybe I missed it. So did you, outline who was involved in the steering committee?
It's on like the next slide.
Okay, good.
Yeah, all good. Yeah, so basically what we're doing right now is compiling everything into the CSWB plan document, and then we'll finalize that once we have your feedback, and then it will become a public facing document that the community can see. It can really be used as a guide moving forward. And perfect segue, Mayor Murphy, as you asked. So here is a list. So we didn't put the names, but we have a list of the organizations and entities represented by your CSWB plan steering committee. So as you can see, it spans multiple sectors, including community services, government, health, education, law enforcement. We also had representation from OCN on there. And really, we're striving to span the different sectors and make sure that we had a lot of perspectives included at that table. So in terms of CSWB plans in general, and what they can do and sort of the outcomes associated with them, obviously you have this document that outlines a bunch of data that was collected, local priorities, and some action items. But in addition to that, there's a lot of other outcomes that emerge from these processes. So as you can see listed on the slide, some of these include bringing people together and guiding collaborative action. So as I mentioned, the steering committee is multi-sectoral, brings together decision makers from various communities, sectors and backgrounds and organizations and things like that. And this also helps us to break down silos as we bring these folks together, thinking about action planning and how to address community challenges and gaps. They can identify what's already being done in their sector. We can identify where there's duplication, what's already happening, and really focus on collaborative efforts and moving forward. They can also be a really great way to share the perspectives of various community members through different data collection methods to make sure that the voices of those who are often overlooked in decision-making processes can be elevated. So this is why we adopt a really in-depth data collection process to inform this work. So we have the general survey, which goes out to the community at large, the review of existing data, looking at what's already been done and also not wanting to duplicate that, but then also that community engagement piece, which allows us to have focused conversations with different subpopulations and groups within the community to really give them an opportunity to share their perspectives. And I'll go through in more detail the specific groups that we engaged in that process as well. And then also through monitoring, oh, Bola, can you go back just for 1 sec? Thank you. Through monitoring and evaluation, we also kind of demonstrate that piece around accountability. We can track progress being made towards the goals that are identified, and really ensure that the right people are around the table to address each of the priority areas. So thank you. And so that's why these plans aren't a simple solution. As I mentioned, so one of the most common things we hear when we do this work with communities is, how is this different from all the other processes that have happened where people come in, they collect information, they give us a report, they go away, and then it just sits on a shelf and collects dust. And that's a fair point. This happens a lot in communities, and we see this a lot. And because of this, we like to be very upfront about this and acknowledge that these plans are developed to identify both short and long-term solutions to local challenges. And because of that, they require ongoing focus and attention, long-term investment, community support and buy-in, multi-sectoral collaboration, and commitment. And my colleague Stacy is going to touch on this a little bit more later on, but recognizing that it can't just be done off the side of someone's desk. There has to be commitment, and not just from one group, but across the community, to really implement these plans and figure out how this can be a sustained effort that leads to long-term change. All right, so before we go into implementation, though, I'm just going to provide an overview of the data collection that informed the work in a bit more detail. So next slide, please. Thank you. So this is the overview of the data collection process that I mentioned that we undertook to inform this work. So again, it's kind of a three-pronged approach that includes a review of existing data, a community survey, and community engagement. And on the next slide, there's a bit more in-depth information in regards to each piece here. So as you can see, we reviewed existing data from multiple sources. So this included Statistics Canada, Manitoba Health, Manitoba Justice, the Northern Health Region, Public Safety Canada, and so on. And we, in addition to our own search for data, we also asked the steering committee to support us in this and share with us any, existing reports or data sources that they were aware of that we could include in our compilation of existing data. And then in terms of a survey, we collected information through the survey that was administered online, and then there were also hard copies made available to people who weren't able to access them online. And the survey asked questions about various aspects related to safety and well-being in the PAW and the broader Tri community. So this included things like demographics, happiness, life satisfaction, substance use, sense of belonging, crime, accessibility and availability of local services, and so on and so forth. And as you can see, we got almost 800 responses, which is a great response rate for a community of this size in particular. And then finally, in addition to those pieces, as I mentioned, we had focused conversations or community engagement sessions with multiple groups from the community to allow us to gather more in-depth information. And specifically, when we had these conversations, and we had a similar conversation with you folks as the town council way back about a year ago when we visited, where we asked about what's working well or what do you appreciate about the community, what are the challenges in the community, and what could be done to improve safety and well-being in the community. And so this is what we asked all of these different groups. And as you can see from the slide, this included youth, local businesses, service providers and frontline workers, people with lived and living experience, OCN, seniors, folks from RM of Kelsey, municipal staff, the steering committee, yourselves, and the interagency team, and so on and so forth. So our goal with the engagement was really to make sure that we captured a broad range of perspectives and experiences. And then this is just a fun slide that we wanted to share some photos of our trip to the PA, our first trip to the PA. We came back again. And we actually went in when we did the engagement with the high school students. We actually were there on Halloween. So as you can see on the bottom right there, we dressed up alongside Mayor Murphy and sat in the classroom and had conversations with the students. And then we also had the opportunity to visit Clearwater Lake, which certainly lives up to its name. So yeah, really enjoyed our time in the PA, and it was great for us, as I said, coming from Ontario, to be able to experience the community firsthand. So when we collect this data, as I mentioned, we typically ask what's going well or what do you appreciate, what are the challenges, and what are the recommendations to improve safety and well-being. It's really easy through this work to get bogged down with the challenges and the things that are wrong and the problems. Every community has things like that. You know, every community has areas that need improvement. And obviously that's a big focus of this work, but we also don't want to overlook the strengths and what's going well in the community. And that's why we always start with asking folks what they love and appreciate about their community when we do these. And this information will be featured within the CSWB plan document as well. And so we thought we'd provide a summary of what we heard in terms of the strengths of the PA today. And so, as you can see on the slide, the things that stood out for community members was they really appreciate the sense of community, how friendly and supportive people are, as well as the size of the community, that it's walkable, less busy than a large city. And there were also some that mentioned that there's a lot of multi-generational families who've been living in the PA for years and, you know, love being there. There was also a clear appreciation for nature. Again, Clearwater Lake, which we had the privilege of experiencing firsthand. Totally understand why that came up multiple times in the data, as well as just in general, the forests, the lakes, and the outdoor activities that come with those. Many folks also highlighted that they really enjoy the close connection with OCN and Indigenous culture and the events that bring people together and broader efforts to bring, you know, foster pride and inclusivity and make it a really welcoming place. And then there was also a really large appreciation for just general events that occur within the community. And just appreciating the sense of community within the PA and the Tri community. So we thought that was really great. And it's really important to highlight that because it's showing, you know, the strengths of your community. And yeah, like I said, an important piece of this process is building on what's working well. Okay. So in terms of areas of focus for the plan, we're now going to give you an overview of the priorities that emerged as needing kind of particular attention in the PA based on the data. So in the CSWB plan, we currently have 6 priority areas with 29 goals. So that's spread across the 6 priority areas. And then within that, 44 actions related to them. Obviously, in the interest of time, we won't be able to go through every single one of those today. But what we're going to do is give you an overview of each of the priority areas and an example of a couple goals and actions related to each one so that you can get a sense of what the process looked like and what the outcomes were. I'll also just note a couple things. So we made an effort to try and identify action items that span across the prevention spectrum. And by that, I mean not just responding to challenges. So, having more police, for example, but also efforts to move upstream and focus on prevention. So things like what can we do in terms of, education for youth around substance use, for example, to prevent that from happening in the first place. So we wanted to really strike a balance between the two. And then we also tried to consider having a balance as much as we could of both short and long-term actions, recognizing that, we want some of those quick wins and items that can be done relatively quickly. And then obviously other pieces that will require more long-term sustained investment to see change. Through this conversation too, we also acknowledge that there's a lot of work already happening in the community and identified that within the plan, recognizing that some of these actions that you're about to see might simply be continue what's already going on, or in addition to this, add something else. And just one other thing to flag, it's important to remember that these plans are typically meant for long-term, so that 3 to 5 year window typically. And so they include governance and implementation considerations to help keep the process moving, ensure ongoing buy-in, and track progress along the way. And so everything that we're sharing with you today has been developed in partnership with your CSWB Plan Steering Committee. So we didn't create this on our own. We analyzed the data, brought it to them, and through these conversations, this is where we landed. And then the images on the screen right now are just a quick peek at what the final plan is looking like. As I mentioned, we're working on finalizing it, but it's coming together nicely. And all of the pieces that we've mentioned so far and will be mentioning will also be included within that final plan document. Okay. So for each priority area, I'm going to go over some goals and then actions associated with them. But before I do that, I just wanted to give you kind of a sense of the process we use with the steering committee and how we ended up with these different elements. So basically what we did is we presented that list of themes that I mentioned that we identified from the data collection process. So we collected the data, we found a list of key kind of things that emerged. And from that list of themes, we presented them to the steering committee. We then had a conversation with them, talked about each one to identify, do they become a priority area for the CSWB plan? And that conversation was based on a number of different things. So relevance to community safety and well-being planning, feasibility, existing work. So if something came up but was already being addressed, it might not have been a priority because somebody else was already addressing it, things like that. And once we did that, then within each of the priority areas, so as we mentioned, there are 6 of them, we asked the steering committee to identify measurable goals that we want to achieve in relation to each one. So we'll give you an example in a minute, but basically here's the priority. So one of the priorities is housing and houselessness. So what is a goal we want to achieve? Like increase housing stock would be an example, something like that. So we identified a list of goals for each one. And then once we had goals for each priority area, we then asked them, okay, let's identify action items to then achieve those goals. So we basically moved downwards. So we started more high level and got more specific. So as I go through, and I'll hand it over to Stacy halfway through. As we go through each priority area, you'll see that there's the priority bucket, which is the broad category, the goals related to each one, and then the specific actions. And that's how we got to that piece. We also asked the steering committee to create a vision statement. So this is kind of the overarching vision for the CSWB plan. We did an exercise with them where we asked them to think about, if the plan was successfully implemented in 5 years, what does the community look like? And this is where we landed. So the vision statement for the CSWB plan is, the PAW is a vibrant, safe, and welcoming northern community where pride, connection, and support thrive. Known for collaboration and innovation, we offer a peaceful lifestyle with clean streets, beautiful parks, and access to nature, housing, and health services. As a united tri-community, we foster opportunity, wellness, and hope for all residents. So again, this is aspirational. This is what we're hoping we see following the implementation of the CSWB plan down the road. All right. So now we're going to do the overview of the priority areas. So the first priority is housing and houselessness. And so as you can see from the slide, this is just a summary of what we heard from the data. Some of the key things that emerged was a need for more housing in the PAW just in general, and then in particular, affordable housing for low-income families or individuals, rental spaces, and housing for seniors. We also heard about a need for better quality housing, so improving the existing housing stock, challenges associated with encampments and visible houses in the downtown area, some safety concerns, some paraphernalia, things like that. And it was also worth noting that people expressed both frustration and concern around safety and what's happening, but also empathy towards the need for greater support for unhoused folks. And so related to that, so here's two examples. So one of the goals we asked them to come up with goals related to housing and houses. One was improve access to and the condition of existing housing stock. And another one was expand housing options across the housing continuum with attention to specific populations. So for example, seniors. And so the related action items were increase investment in housing development and pursue access to appropriate services across the housing continuum for people in need, including stable and affordable housing. All right. So those are some examples. Again, there are more actions and goals outlined in the plan. In terms of another priority area, was substance use and mental health. So again, we heard a lot about general concerns related to substance use, public intoxication, needle disposal, and having paraphernalia out in public. There was also a call for more treatment options and recognition that responding to these issues cannot just fall on law enforcement and that other options are needed, and also a general sense that more response is required, particularly given that our CMP is very much under-resourced and overtaxed in the town, and we need alternative options to support that. And then similarly, so one of the goals was strengthen youth prevention efforts through education and engagement approaches. And then as you can see, some of the actions under this were collaborate with the PAW Friendship Center to support the development of their emerging youth hubs. So again, this is already happening. So the action item is supporting what's already going on. And enhance existing youth programs, including the youth mentorship program, which they're working towards right now. Reintroduce a school-based addictions counselor and introduce substance use prevention programming within the schools.
Slow down a little bit more, let people think about that.
We recognize this is a lot of information, folks, and this is part of the reason we're just giving an example of each one, because it'd be a lot to present it all to you right now. The third priority is crime and safety. So just some highlights on the slide. As you can see, we heard from a lot of survey respondents that they are not overly satisfied with their personal safety in the community. Obviously, we recognize the survey, as I mentioned, 800 responses. So it's a small sample, but it's also worth recognizing that this is something that shouldn't be ignored. And through our engagement sessions and conversations with other folks in the community, we also heard this around concern around their sense of safety. We also heard that there's a general perception that crime and violence in the PAW are increasing, and there's a general fear from a lot of folks about being harassed or harmed in public, and that's preventing them from going around local businesses and things like that in particular areas. And then also just a general desire to improve and beautify spaces needing attention. So recognizing the potential is there, it just needs a bit more attention. And again, acknowledging that this is something that's already starting to be addressed.
Katie, Councillor Hopper has a question here.
On the 800 or so responses, where did this particular theme rank?
We didn't really rank them. It was more just kind of what emerged. And then, so even the priority areas, the ones that we're presenting to you, aren't in any particular order. They just happen to be the key themes that were identified by the steering committee as areas needing particular focus.
I just wondered if there was any of the 800 who didn't have this as a concern.
Say that again here.
I just wondered if any of the 800 responses didn't have this as a concern.
Mm. All of these themes emerged like heavily through the surveys as well. Yeah, but it was kind of like there were general questions, and so I think like so in terms of like perception of safety, are you asking specifically if they have crime and safety as a concern, or?
I think what the question is around, the majority of people that were responding to this survey when it came to this topic.
Yeah.
Felt that it was unsafe, and they felt that it was unsafe for their personal safety.
Yeah. And again, recognizing 800 people out of the community, so that doesn't mean that this isn't generalized to every person in the PA by any means.
Yeah.
So we recognize that for sure.
So Katie, and just to put a little context there, I mean, even in your one-on-one engagement, so there's the survey, but that's one part of this data collection, but you also had face-to-face discussions. And I do remember, like, even in the schools, this was a topic where people felt unsafe in certain areas within the community.
Yeah, that's correct. Particularly in the downtown area. We heard that in the schools. We heard it with the seniors. I recall them talking about it, and a few other conversations as well. So, yeah. Okay. So then, and again, this is just a summary of what we heard. So then in relation to this priority area, again, just a couple examples of some goals and actions. Bola, if you could go to the next slide, please, and thanks. Thank you. So one of the goals was enhance partnerships between service providers, law enforcement, and the broader community. And then, so as you can see, the actions are enhancing opportunities for community-led safety networks such as neighborhood watch and citizens on patrol. So again, recognizing that everything can't fall on law enforcement and the need for additional entities to support this, supporting the PA Friendship Center's efforts to reactivate the Bear Clan, again, same thing, and then aligning restorative justice efforts to support those outlined in the OCN's community safety plan. So again, collaboration and recognizing what's outlined in OCN's plan, which we also reviewed in preparation for the CSWB plan to make sure that they make sense and we're not duplicating there. And with that, I will hand it over to Stacy to touch on the other ones.
Thanks, Katie. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. We can go to the next slide, Bola. Thank you. Perfect. Okay, so continuing on with your priority themes, the next is children and youth. And in our data collection, we saw that a higher number of youth are in the low income measure in the PA than compared to the rest of the province, and that there are higher charge rates as well as increasing rates of youth violence recorded in official statistics. In the engagement sessions we conducted, youth definitely noted an intention to leave the PA once they finish school to pursue education and careers in other communities. Youth engagement efforts also demonstrated a call for increased youth-friendly options for recreation. And past just talking to youth, we talked to other community groups about what they would support for youth in the PA. And there's definitely a strong support in your community for increased levels of prevention programming for youth, especially around substance use as a particular concern. We can go to the next slide. And so again, as Katie explained, we took that information and worked with your steering committee and your project team and turned that into some goals and actions. So this is just one example. One goal within this broader theme is to increase local youth awareness of career paths in the PA and the surrounding tri-community. And the actions associated with that goal are to collaborate with high schools and local industries to investigate possible skill-based learning, hands-on training, or other work experience development opportunities, and to work alongside Kelsey School Division to try and source some funding to support that kind of work. Again, this is primary prevention targeting all youth in the PAW, and it's nice and upstream, right? It's really trying to enhance local youth employment opportunities as a preventative factor for youth to engage in criminal activity or other disorderly behavior. And next slide, thank you. Next theme is services, infrastructure, and development. As Katie noted, we heard a lot of positives about what is available in the PAW already. People really appreciate the sports and recreation opportunities, the green space and the parks and the cultural events. There are concerns about a lack of healthcare options for both physical and mental health, and there are calls for improvements to infrastructure. I'm sure that's not new to the folks sitting at the table, ranging from road conditions to cellular reception and the infrastructure of the hospital itself. Next slide. In this example, the goal is to increase access to safe and affordable transportation options within the PAW and the surrounding tri-community. And one action that emerged from our conversations in our data collection, as well as with your steering committee, was the potential to investigate a local transit option, but not a bus system, because we heard that that wasn't feasible. So what could be explored in coordination with relevant community partners? It could be a community shuttle program, it could be a volunteer driver network, something specific to the senior population, for example. And again, this would be considered primary prevention.
Hold on, Councilor Hopper's got a question, Stacy.
I think there was a typo there on the hospital. We called it the town's hospital. Actually, it's provincial hospital. We're the ones responsible, as you know. I'm just saying that to it's the oldest hospital in Manitoba, I believe, and they had a point where there's a province's hospital, and maybe they'll take some one year finally.
Yeah, and when Councilor Hopper mentions it, it is the oldest hospital in Manitoba. And it's also been declared at the end of life, I believe about 10 years ago, so.
And so, sorry, was the concern that it's a provincial service?
It's not, it's just me being, trying to shed some light, it's, on the provinces neglecting, replacement of the hospital and health service to the PAW. So if it's a provincial hospital, if anybody's reading that, will get the idea that.
Yeah, can you just back up one, that's back up one slide? So where was that? Yeah, where it says the age of the town's hospital, if the town doesn't own the hospital, so I guess it's just the wording around that, so somebody doesn't believe that that's town infrastructure.
I understand. Okay, yeah, we can change that wording for sure. The hospital located in the town of the PAW or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Extent? Yeah, okay, not a problem. We'll make sure that's clarified. And we can go to the next slide as well. Thanks, Bola. And then lastly, the theme of sense of belonging emerged strongly in our data collection. There were concerns about experiences of discrimination or racism, as well as gaps in the availability of culturally appropriate services. When we looked at the survey data in particular, it becomes clear that there are disproportionately negative outcomes experienced by Indigenous peoples. This isn't exclusive to the PAW, but it was apparent in the data. So for example, First Nation and Métis respondents expressed lower levels of happiness than white respondents, as well as lower levels of life satisfaction overall. So the desire really emerged to think about how can this be how can sense of belonging be fostered locally, right? What can we do? What are you already doing that can be capitalized on? Not only for First Nations folks, but also for other communities like the Rainbow community or newcomers to the PAW. What can we strengthen there to increase feelings of belonging? We'll go to the next slide. Great. And so some of the goals that emerge in this theme are to promote education and awareness on truth and reconciliation, as well as other anti-racism and anti-discrimination initiatives, and to strengthen and expand local truth and reconciliation efforts, particularly in relationship to the calls to action that are already noted within your town's strategic plan. And this is a really good example of an area where we've worked to incorporate what's already being done by your community and expanded on it. So there's some good work already being done. Those first two goals are already underway. You folks are already engaging with community leaders to promote anti-racism efforts. You're already participating alongside OCN in some of those TRC related programs. One action that's new is to look at developing a training and education campaign on truth and reconciliation for local organizations and service systems, which could be explored in partnership with the local Friendship Center. Okay. So we're going to talk about what happens next because we know that's top of mind for everyone. I'm recognizing we're running short on time, so we can skip to the next slide. I'm going to do my best to try and explain the constellation governance model as quickly as possible. So this is an implementation framework that is used across Canada in many communities to implement CSWB plans. Often down in that blue, you'll see what's called backbone support. This is usually housed within the municipal government, the town government in one form or another, and I'll talk about that in a minute. The backbone support does the work basically that CCFSC has been doing, right? The project management, the administration, the moving things forward. The steering committee, you'll see in that green circle there, the steering committee provides oversight, right? We've had a steering committee for this process for this entire time. We would hope that that existing steering committee could be leveraged and added onto, and those folks in that group would continue to provide oversight of this plan. And then there are the working groups. So the working groups are associated with your themes, right? So you folks, for example, would have a working group on sense of belonging. You would have a working group on children and youth. And those working groups are made up of the doers, right? This is less about oversight and more about implementation. How do you prioritize the actions? How do you get those actions off the ground? Who needs to be at those tables? That's the work of those smaller working groups. They are provided support by the backbone, and they are provided oversight by the steering committee. And go on to the next slide, please, Bola. And so this is our recommendation for the way that this could move forward in the PAW. Again, want to let you all know that these are recommendations. This is part of what we would like your feedback on, and we understand that town council has an important role to play here around what happens next. But this is based on conversations with your steering committee, conversations with your project team, and just what we know from other implementation plans across the country. So we would recommend that there's a dedicated CSWB coordinator. That can be a full-time staff position, that can be a part-time staff position, but that it is housed within the town, the municipal government, and that CSWB coordinator provides that backbone support to the constellation governance model to help the work keep moving forward. That's really the role of the CSWB coordinator. There's also an opportunity for a program called community mobilization to play a role potentially in your community moving forward. It's recommended as an action in your plan. There is community mobilization in other communities across Manitoba. It provides client-centered work to folks experiencing inadequate housing or justice system involvement or substance use. And so that is a possible opportunity as well to start community mobilization and the conversations around what that might look like. So overall, the CSWB coordinator would provide the backbone support and drive implementation, working in collaboration with that steering committee and action teams, and then the potential of community mobilization to support some of that on the ground work. And I'll talk very, very quickly about monitoring and evaluation, basically to say that it will be included in your plan. We're currently working on what indicators and data points make sense to collect based on your themes. We will help your coordinator or whoever, your project team, whatever this looks like moving forward, we will help them design a data development plan, understand where to collect information, how to collect that locally. That's some of the ongoing support work that we can do here at CCFSC to make sure that this part stays on track, because monitoring and evaluation can be a bit tricky. And so it's something we'll help you folks design. We won't just expect you to be off on your own doing that part. And I think we can move on. You don't need, we'll explain, we'll include a data development plan for you folks. And if people want more information on that, I'm happy to do it at another time when I want to make sure there's space for questions here. What happens now? Yes, thank you. This is important. We are completing the draft plan currently. We are going to provide the draft plan in its entirety to your project team by the end of the week in a Word document, so that we can still finesse and work with you folks and get feedback from Mayor Murphy on what happens now. We would ask that we have a conversation, receive reactions to the implementation and governance recommendations that we've chatted about very briefly today. We would also ask that people consider what the one-time provincial support might look like in the PAW, how that might best be utilized, and start thinking about some conversations around community mobilization. And Mayor Murphy, we can talk about that with the project team later this week as well. And we also, again, want to flag that CCFSC isn't going anywhere. We are here for another year to support what this looks like next, to help you start working through implementation, and have some of those next step conversations with you folks on the ground. So I'll stop. We've got 10 minutes left, and we are happy to receive immediate reactions, questions, concerns.
Councillor Hopper's got a question.
No, I've done a very good job, lots of information. So going from here, correct me if I'm wrong, the steering committee, if, first of all, you need approval of council, yeah, let's move forward with this. Then we give our blessing to the steering committee, they find a coordinator and resolve is attached to that. I guess we'll have to find money or through grants. Is that kind of the way it will go from here?
It was,
So,
go ahead,
go
Mayor.
ahead. No, I was just gonna, I thought you couldn't hear, go ahead, just say it a little louder, Gary, look at this over here, go. Because that's
I
what-
asked the same question.
Yeah, I think this is what they're saying is that, so the plan going forward would be, from the recommendations, we received the report. From that report, one of the recommendations is that we, use the seed funding to either hire somebody permanently that's housed in the municipality, or find the funding that's required in the municipality. That person then would coordinate the steering committee and all the other support systems that go along, to sort of implement the program. This Katie and Stacy's group would still be involved, because there's some help with the development. You know, one of the things that, you know, we talked a lot about was, and Mike can jump in, is about tracking progress, so that it doesn't become that report that sits on the shelf, and that it's visible and it shows that clear actions, but also clear measurables on progress.
I think the only other thing I'd add to that is that the seed funding we're not saying it has to be used for a coordinator, or that it should be used for a coordinator. I think we will need to have that conversation, Mayor Murphy, with the province around what does that look like. But that funding is available for implementation in some capacity. And so, yes, we do need to define that together.
I do know, provincially, all municipalities, are actually, speaking with, you know, our provincial leadership to say that it's great to have these programs and we've put in all the work to it. But there might still need to be a little bit of assistance, for municipalities to keep moving them forward. And I think that discussion is ongoing as well.
Yeah, and most of those, if not all of them, and you've identified it on there as the wraparound services required. And those are well beyond any resources the town can supply itself, be it mental health or addictions and all of that. That's one of the root causes, but just about all of the challenges that you outlined there. Too big for it.
I would say the other piece of support that we can provide from CCFSC is Manitoba Justice has also compiled some funding sources. We're going to work with your backbone support, your steering committee. We can talk about those funding sources. We can help you think about which ones make sense to apply to. So understanding that maybe some of this is us helping you resource some of these initiatives as well. That's also work that we can assist with.
So the funding that's currently provided, it doesn't have to necessarily go towards a coordinator, but it could go towards somebody who is already in-house who can implement and make progress happen, just to be clear.
I think what we need to do is with your project team, articulate some possibilities based on this plan of what that funding could support.
Okay.
And so I think there can be a variety of ideas and we can help you folks bring those forward.
Cool. And again, it's my concern is always, and I think you highlighted it, Stacy, is that we know that there's gonna have to be some investment by the community in moving the plan like this forward. And we have to decide if we're really serious about doing something or not. Because, you know, sitting on the side of somebody's desk, thinking that we're gonna coordinate this large plan. And it is not so much that this person's doing all of the work all the time. But there is a lot of actually moving parts to sort of keep that focus and keep that moving forward. So, you know, I think it's gonna be up to council to decide, you know, whether that investment is, what that investment looks like. And if we're truly wanting to do something, because I think, you know, not only did we hear it in the survey and from your engagement sessions, that were here. We heard it a couple of weeks ago as well in our community safety night, where, you know, our community members are feeling uneasy and they want to see some change and that's not gonna come free. And I don't know, I'm thinking and I'm hoping around the room that, when we look at our administration, that they've all got pretty well full-time jobs now. And how do we, if we're gonna shift away from what they do today, what are we freeing up and what are we leaving behind, sort of thing, so. Councillor Comer, you have any comments, concerns?
Presentation was very thorough and it really pointed out the problems that our town is facing.
Yeah.
And
And I think, Mike, so there's a lot more actions behind that though, right?
Yes.
Like this is, I think, Katie and Stacy had given a little, you know, flavor of the day sort of thing, but. There's a lot more of that work that would come in the full planning, Mike.
Yes.
And there's even some of the actions that took place last week as well coming out of that, and in terms of truth and reconciliation during culture days, for example. There was a blanket ceremony that went on, there were multiple cultural events, so. Even though some things have been pinpointed, still a work in progress, right?
Yeah, and I don't wanna say, there's a lot of great things going on in our community and there's a lot of great people doing a lot of good work. But you know, I guess the end of the day is what else can we do and what can we do to move it forward and that's, you know, this is where. With Katie and Stacy's group's experience and working with Cassandra from Manitoba Justice and others. You know, have we laid out, this is probably not a perfect plan, but a better plan than what we had yesterday, because I don't think we have a coordinated plan before. So it's gonna be something that's always gonna be a little bit fluid, I believe, and we always gotta be a little bit flexible to be able to change course, but having no plan is a plan to fail, and we have to decide where we're gonna go with it, so. Any other questions? Councillor Allen, anything to add?
No, they add no questions or anything. There's nothing at all really in there that surprises me. This is all stuff we've heard countless times before. I'm encouraged to hear the comment about not having this just be another document that sits on a shelf. That said, I'll be curious how we go forward with it so it doesn't, because every other one did, and talked about it on a shelf to it. So I'm gonna be definitely paying attention to how this unfolds going forward. I'm looking forward to the final report on the 10th, I think you said, and going forward from there. Yeah, getting some rubber on the ground to give on this, but
No, absolutely.
We will share the full report, Mayor Murphy, with yourself and the project team by the end of the week, and then we'll leave it with you to distribute it
Yeah,
to the council as you see fit following.
no, that sounds good. Is there anything, anybody else have any other comments? Anything from you guys, Stacy or Katie or Cassandra?
Just thank you so much for taking the time to hear the presentation today and to give the feedback and your thoughts. We really appreciate it. We look forward to additional feedback afterwards as well. So thank you, everyone.
No, I really appreciate, like I said, it's been a lot of work, and I'm not sure everybody appreciates the amount of work that Mike and Bola and yourself and the steering committee have done behind the scenes, but you know, like I said, having a plan is better than no plan, so
Go Blue Jays.
go Blue Jays.
Yes, go Blue Jay.
Okay, thanks a lot, guys, good to see you again, and we look forward to having our next discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Are you disconnected?